Hi, it's Jeff. I sure hope you are staying safe, keeping yourself busy, and maintaining peace of mind. Through the safety of your earbuds, Bluetooth speaker, or car stereo, join me as I venture out on the wine road.
You know, fermentation is a wild ride, and there's so many factors that go into executing a fermentation, and the best way that we can as winemakers is to really just carry the grapes through the process and not intervene too much.
On today's podcast from my April 11th radio show, it's about time I got this interview posted. I break from the norm a little bit. You've heard me talk with winemakers and winery owners fairly often, but today I chat with an assistant winemaker, Mike Tracy. How much does an assistant contribute to the overall product? Well, quite a bit, as you'll hear. I met Mike Tracy at a wine industry party back in February, I believe. I enjoy industry parties. People with various jobs come together at a winery or tasting room. This time it was Huge Bear in Calistoga in northern Napa Valley. The conversation flows as easily as the wine through the 2-hour period. That night, Mike and I hit it off. He's easy to talk with and a sharp guy. When he told me of his situation working with 4 super premium wine brands in Napa Valley as an assistant winemaker, it intrigued me. Under the tutelage of winemaking husband and wife team, Mark Porembski and Jennifer Williams, they share various duties among Mark and Jen's own brand, Zeitgeist Cellars, as well as Anomaly Vineyards, Arrow and Branch, and Ziada Wines. That's quite a lineup. Mark and Jennifer, per Mike's suggestion, were invited to join in on the interview, but they have young children and appropriately chose to stay safely at home. Whether you're familiar with any of these names or wineries, I think you'll find this interview interesting with a young guy who has a long, successful career ahead of him. Mike starts off with a little more detail about the dynamic between him and Mark and Jennifer.
I'm lucky to work with Jennifer Williams and her husband, Mark Porembski, and they are a married team of consulting winemakers. And so Jennifer has 4 clients or so, and Mark has 3 clients. And so my position essentially floats around to approximately 4 of those clients, and I assist them on a day-to-day basis with operations and maintaining quality of their wine.
Mm-hmm. Nice. So, I guess I should back up just a little bit. What kind of a wine education do you have?
I have a Bachelor of Science degree in viticulture and enology.
Okay.
I earned that in 2012 from Cornell University in Ithaca, New York.
Cornell? Wow.
Yes.
Were you studying Finger Lakes wines and those varieties?
Somewhat, not entirely. The program at Cornell is a very small program, but they do a pretty great job of teaching winemaking and vineyard management for really all different kinds of climates. So from the cool climate region of upstate New York to warmer Mediterranean climates such as Napa and Sonoma County. So they did a pretty nice job of spanning all of that.
Mm-hmm. Was it your dream to come out here, or were you just going to see where the opportunities took you?
So I actually was born in Sonoma County. So I'm a native to Healdsburg, a little town in northern Sonoma County, and grew up in Dry Creek Valley, where my mom worked for a large commercial winery for 18 years. And I was brought up on the ranch by my godparents, who were also employees of this winery.
Is this a not-to-be-named winery?
It is considered the largest winery of the world, and that's collectively with all of their wineries throughout the world.
Right. So this would be a Gallo
Potentially.
Potentially. Yes. Yeah, okay. That's right. Once you work there, you can't speak of it afterwards. So your mother said, "Don't talk about my job."
No, my mom had a great experience working for Gallo, and I have vivid memories of running around the vineyards with supervision, of course, not running loose, but and then running into the winery where my mom's office was. She was an accountant there for her entire time there, and started when it was Fry Brothers, and then it became the Fry Ranch property for Gallo.
Right, great. Did you have any other experiences out of college before you started working out here, or did you just come out here right away when you graduated? And
Yes. So I should have mentioned that I actually went to Cal Poly at San Luis Obispo for the first 2 years of my undergraduate education. So straight out of high school, went to Cal Poly, and I did one internship prior to transferring to Cornell at La Crema Winery, which is a Kendall Jackson property in Windsor, California. Mm-hmm. So did one cellar internship there, my first internship, and then took off to Cornell.
Great. Didn't Jennifer Williams go to Cal Poly? Did I see?
She did. She did go to Cal Poly. She studied agriculture there. Yes.
Yeah, great. And when did you hook up with those two?
So I was lucky to meet Jen and Mark. That would have been almost 2 years ago. So in June of 2018, I believe, is when I met them.
Mm-hmm. Were you working yet, or what were you doing then?
I was. So after graduating from Cornell in 2012, I embarked on a series of internships to really kind of cut my teeth in winemaking and viticulture, and had several of those internships until I landed my first full-time job, which was at Checkerboard Vineyards in Calistoga. And I worked at Checkerboard from 2015 to 2018, and then I met Jen and Mark in June of 2018.
Cool. Would you tell me you're 26?
I am 31, actually.
You were 31. Why was I thinking you were younger?
No. Ripe old age of 31.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this is the last question I have for you. Where do you see yourself when you turn 30? You can tell me what you did last year.
Right. Exactly.
Well, great. I mean, it sounds like you've had a nice progression of moving forward, and gosh, and you're still young in your career. I mean, so much more to do.
Yes. I feel really fortunate to have had all of the experiences in winemaking and vineyard that I have. And I feel even luckier to be working with who I am right now on all of these amazing projects, and having the kind of varied experiences that I have on a daily basis.
Yeah. That's another thing I wanted to ask you too before we get into the different brands, because I do want to talk about that. What are you doing now? I mean, obviously we have the virus madness going on, but as people have heard, viticulture still continues, and cellar work needs to continue. It is an essential business. You can't just walk away from it. So these days, what are you doing on a kind of a daily basis?
So right now, we are, of course, in the quote-unquote off-season, which for us doesn't really exist completely, but we are in, we have a few things going on. We are racking our 2019 wines. We're also doing a fair amount of blending of our 2018 wines, prepping for upcoming bottlings. Mm-hmm. So there is a lot of activity in the cellar right now, but a lot of our work is being done at distance. And so as the assistant winemaker to Mark and Jen, a lot of my time is spent collecting samples at various facilities and bringing them to Mark and Jen. Typically, we would all sit together and have multi-stage blending sessions, which sometimes can last many, many months until we arrive at the winning blend for that wine. But right now, it is more of a private activity where we're trying to respect one another's health and safety, and
right.
But we're all still working.
Mm-hmm. Assistant winemaker Mike Tracy. A minute ago, you heard him say that one of his responsibilities is racking the wine. That term gets thrown around a lot, but you may not know exactly what that means. So Mike will explain it.
Racking is a process in winemaking where essentially it usually occurs after malolactic fermentation, which we hope completes by December or January, sometimes a little bit later after a vintage. And so typically the first racking happens in February or March or so, and that is essentially moving the free-run clear wine off of the top of the lees, which settle out So the lees are essentially solids, dead yeast cells, sediment that slowly drops out of the wine. And so racking...
To the bottom of the barrel.
Correct, to the bottom of the barrel. And so a small layer sort of collects there at the bottom of the barrel, and racking is when we, usually with a bulldog or a pump, we will pump the wine off of that lees, and then we'll take that barrel, empty those lees out, wash, clean, and rinse and dry the barrel, and then we'll return that wine back to the barrel. So it's essentially a hygiene a hygienic process for the wine early on.
And after barrel after barrel after barrel, that's a lot of work, depending on how much you have.
It can be, yes, it can be quite the feat. And some winemakers will rack more than one time during the barrel aging of a wine. We typically rack one time during the life of the wine.
And people often hear about stirring the lees. More typically with a Chardonnay or a white wine, you might want to stir it up a little bit. It softens it and gives it a smoother mouthfeel.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. So we practice sur lie aging or batonnage on most of our white wines. For it depends on the varietal and the program that we're working in, but. For instance, for this Arrow and Branch Sauvignon Blanc that we've got on the table, we will stir that for approximately 5 months after harvest.
Really? I did not pick up on that at all, though.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, because you can taste it sometimes too well in a Chardonnay, which is what people are getting tired of, that creaminess and the butteriness of it.
Sure. Yes. I think that might speak to the vineyard that the fruit comes from, which is the Stagecoach Vineyard. It's a high elevation site, and so the fruit is extremely concentrated and rather high in acid. And this is made by Jennifer Williams. And I would say, having working with Jen for the past couple of years, she has a very fresh winemaking style. So we're really striving to retain acidity in especially our white wines. We really like that profile. But the batonnage does bring some softness and creaminess from the yeast autolysis that's at the bottom of the barrel. So those we do not rack.
Yeah. So it's certainly okay to utilize that lees when it's there at times.
Certainly.
It's
when it's
not a terribly
wanted.
bad thing. Yeah, when it's wanted.
Of course. And with red wines, you typically don't see as much batonnage or stirring. Sometimes if a red wine is taking a while to finish primary fermentation, where the sugar is converted to alcohol and CO2 and water, sometimes stirring is encouraged to help suspend those yeasts that would otherwise fall to the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah, kick them back into action.
Exactly. But usually we wouldn't stir red wine for any other reason.
I think, isn't Pinot Noir about the only one you do it with in a red wine?
Pinot Noir, I think some winemakers do choose to do that. We make a Russian River Valley, Green Valley Pinot Noir for one of our clients, and we typically don't conduct much stirring with those wines.
Let's talk about some of these brands, and we'll start with, I guess, the Zeitgeist. And that's the one that the two own together. That's their brand?
Correct. So Zeitgeist Cellars is owned by Jen Williams and Mark Porembski, and that's their personal label. And so that is who I'm directly employed by. And they produce a really fun and interesting portfolio of wines. We produce a Trousseau Gris from Russian River Valley, from Peter Finucchi's vineyard, which you
don't see too often.
No, you do not. It is actually the only known Trousseau Gris vineyard in the United States. So we're really lucky to have that relationship with Peter and make that wine. It's a gorgeous, fresh wine.
Great, yeah.
We also make a Chenin Blanc from St. Helena. I don't think I can disclose the vineyard for that guy, but that's a really a beautiful wine, slightly more rich in style, but still retains a lot of freshness and acidity.
Right.
So those are the 2 white wines we make for Zeitgeist. We have a Napa Valley red wine, and that is made from a few different vineyards. The Llewellyn Vineyard in St. Helena, the Oakville Research Station in Oakville, and then a small amount from the Sleeping Lady Vineyard in Yountville.
Speaking of the Oakville Research Station, we were talking about that when I was sitting with Dan Petrosky, because that's UC Davis. They were behind starting that, and Harold Olmo, certainly part of that back in the day.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. It's a gorgeous vineyard. It's farmed incredibly well, and it's surrounded by some pretty interesting.
Does it back up against Tokelon?
It does. It's right up against Tokelon, and also Martha's Vineyard is just north-south of where our block is.
That's an awesome location.
Pretty good one.
Jeez. I like the name Zeitgeist. It's one of those words you hear, you've heard it. It's like, what does it really mean? And when I saw on their website, German romanticists coined the term to describe the cultural, ethical, and spiritual mood of an era. Right. I thought, boy, that's almost ideal for a wine's vintage, which comes, close to that. Certainly, wine captures the weather of an era, but
right.
It could also represent the mindset of whoever is working with the grapes.
Without a doubt. I think that Jen and Mark were very deliberate with choosing that name, mm-hmm. and I think that for them, I can't speak for them, of course, but knowing their sort of wine style and their approach to winemaking, I think that they have they strike a really nice balance between classical, kind of classic Napa Valley winemaking, but also some modern techniques in there as well. So they certainly like to make wines that have a lot of power and intensity, but also restraint, and they're not afraid of tannins either. So
yeah.
Well, they got some really nice reviews on the 16 vintages of several of the cabs, 95, 96, 97 scores, and your 17 is looking as respected as well.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I know that we're very excited about the reviews that we're getting on our wines for sure.
We were joking a little bit at the industry party that, I've often say that, I know the assistant winemaker does most of the work. The winemakers are just kind of directing people, but it's the assistant that's out there busting his butt or her butt and making things happen. So you definitely deserve part of the credit.
Hey, well, thank you so much. But that said, Jen and Mark are very hands-on winemakers, and they are in the cellar almost as much as me, if not as much as me, which is something I really respect and hope to remain doing in the course of my career. I think winemakers always need to have their hands dirty at harvest, always need to be in the cellar tasting barrels as they're aging, and not get too caught up behind a keyboard or a desk.
As you can tell, Mike is in a good situation right now working with Jen and Mark. You'll get a grasp of how good that situation is when you hear about the other brands he works with. Now we'll touch upon the brand Anomaly Vineyards. Their wines are by allocation only because they don't bottle too many cases.
Yes, approximately 1,000 cases, 1,000 to 1,400 cases or so, depending on vintage. So Mark Porembski is the winemaker for Anomaly Vineyards, and that is owned by Steve and Linda Goldfarb, an incredible couple, two incredible people. They've been in St. Helena for a long time, and Anomaly is just a really wonderful winery to be part of. So they make the Anomaly Vineyards Cabernet. And then they make a designation wine, which is sort of a reserve wine. And then they also have a small release of Petit Verdot, which is stunning, and I get really excited about.
A single varietal?
Single varietal Petit Verdot.
Wow, nice. Yeah,
yes.
Those are fun when you get them in if they're good.
Right, yes. And the past couple of years, Mark and I have just been astounded at how approachable and enjoyable this Petit Verdot is. It can often be such a coarse varietal, and the Petit Verdot coming off of that site is stunning. So
Speaking of stunning, that winery they built is very attractive, yet has that older look to it. It looks like it's 200 years old.
Yes, it's a great site. It's definitely a hands-on cellar, I would say. Of all the wineries that I currently work in, Anomaly is of the most hands-on, manual, very physical winemaking. It's a small site, and they have a lot of barrels, and so you have to be very agile and very careful at that facility. We are everywhere, but in particular there, just in maneuvering everything, and it's a very detail-oriented estate winery. And during harvest, there are typically 2 harvest interns, and then Mark, and then I will come in and sort of help out on big days. But during harvest, that's typically not somewhere I spend too much time. I'm usually spending time at a few other facilities with our other brands.
Okay, cool. Arrow and Branch. Now, that's not a brand that's part of the common vernacular among typical wine drinkers, but they're very highly respected, the wines that come out of Arrow and Branch. And so Jennifer is the winemaker there.
Jennifer's the winemaker there. And so Arrow and Branch is owned by Steve and CN Contursi. Wonderful people. They live down in Laguna Beach, but they also spend a lot of time up here at their estate house in Coombsville, which is where Arrow and Branch started. So they have a small vineyard surrounding the house, which is planted to all Cabernet Franc. Mike Wolf farms that vineyard. And so Arrow and Branch has quite a few different wines, a few single vineyard wines that we're really excited about, one of which is Beckstoffer Dr. Crane from St. Helena. They've got a Vine Hill Ranch. They typically release a single varietal Cabernet Franc, and then they have a white label, which is usually Cabernet Franc dominant, but has some Cabernet and some Merlot. And then they have a black label, which is a very ready-to-drink, gorgeous blend.
I love good Cabernet Francs when they're made a certain way.
Oh, yes.
Not too peppery, but I love the pepper on Cab Francs, as long as it's not too green.
Right.
It can be really tasty.
Right. It's Cabernet Franc is one of Jennifer's favorite varietals, and definitely we strive for a balanced style of Cabernet Franc that is not showing too much phenolic kind of edge and methoxypyrazine. We certainly are going for a balanced and luscious Cabernet Franc.
Nice. All right, we paused because you poured me the next wine that we're going to be talking about, which I had not had a chance to taste yet, and really nice wine. Ziada, which is Karen Cakebread's project.
Correct.
And Jennifer, again, is the winemaker for Ziada.
Yes.
You help out.
Yep.
Nice, not too heavy a tannin, and the acid is not too vibrant. You know, it's
right.
It's a nicely balanced wine already for a 17.
Thank you. Yes. So this is our 2017 Ziada Meteor Vineyard. So it's a single vineyard Cabernet Sauvignon, 100% Cabernet Sauvignon. Oh. It's Clone 4 and Clone 7, and it is from the Meteor Vineyard in Coombsville, which is just an incredible site. It is a site where there's just tons of drainage, lots of rocky cobble soil or lack thereof. So the vines really struggle there and stress there, but just enough. And we in the cellar we have to coax these tannins out just right and not over extract and bring out too much tannin, because this site does have a tendency to produce wines of high tannin. So yeah, I'm really enjoying the sort of dark black and blue fruits. I'm getting incense and kind of savory character, more meaty olive kind of notes. Mm-hmm. And then on the mouthfeel, definitely a soft texture, but pretty powerful. I think that this wine's going to be able to age for a long time.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned earlier when we were talking, it's a controlled tannin, and what you're meaning is that it could go much greater, so it's up to you guys to keep it at this level by choice.
Certainly, and that's the case with any wine, of course. But in particular with the Meteor Vineyard, with how much power is in this vineyard. Yeah, we have to sort of ride that line in the fermentation just right, and get those fermentation temperatures right, and the cap management just right. And I think that Jennifer did that this vintage.
So if you were a cowboy kind of guy, would you call it like riding a bronco buck? You got to hang on and just keep them in control. And
yeah, fermentation is a wild ride, and there's so many factors that go into executing a fermentation in the best way that we can as winemakers. And sort of the way that I learned about making wine is to really just carry the grapes through the process and not intervene too much. And so intervening just enough with temperature control, cap management, minimal yeast and minimal nutrient additions. And then something that I'm, of course, still learning and always picking Jen and Mark's brain about is when to drain the tank, at what point during the fermentation. Is it just ready during that extended maceration, perhaps, where we're ready to drain the free run wine off of the must? That's a very sort of high level decision.
Yeah, because that could add tannin too if you leave it in too long on the skins.
That's right. And
the seeds if they're in there.
Exactly. And we're certainly trying to avoid extracting seed tannin because that tends to be more phenolic and bitter and green. We're looking to extract tannin from the skins. So it's really this delicate sort of interplay between cap management and temperature.
And once you go too far, it's hard to go back, isn't it?
It's hard to go back. And, I think that one can get into having to correct certain mistakes, and that's not exactly definitely not the winemaking that we're doing.
It's not the preferred winemaking. I went to interview somebody once, and she was very upset because her fermentation was stuck, and I think they were going to add whatever they were going to do to get it going again, and you don't want to have to do that.
No, certainly not, and we really strive to not have that happen. So all the decisions that we make from picking, well, even before the picking, but from just really high quality vineyard management and being in the vineyard, and then picking perhaps if there is a part of the vineyard that's diseased versus a part of the vineyard that is not. We would harvest those different blocks separately and ferment them separately so that we have as much control as possible, attention to detail and decision making all the way through the winemaking process.
Yeah. That's why handcrafted wine is so much better than big production wine.
I think that there's a place for all types of wines.
For all types of people. Absolutely.
Exactly. But I'm definitely excited to make wines that that really show terroir and show the love and attention to detail that we're all putting into them.
And even though I was reading that a majority of these that you're working with are Cabernet blend related wines, you kind of touched upon this earlier. You do get to make some Pinot Noir, some Chardonnay, and the Chenin Blanc. So that's cool.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely an exciting portfolio of wines, and I think it just speaks to sort of the wanting to explore and keep going and keep interested.
As I pointed out earlier, my guest Mike Tracy is in a fortunate position to be able to work with a variety of ultra-premium and luxury-level wines in Napa Valley. He's getting some great experience with Cabernet blends and other varieties. Which is his favorite?
Favorite variety.
And you don't have to have one,
Favorite variety to work with at this point, I would say, is probably Cabernet Franc.
Oh.
I find Cabernet Franc, when made really well, to just be absolutely stunning. I like the herbal qualities of Cabernet Franc. Of course, when they're a bit restrained and not overblown. So definitely more on the herbal tea side and less on the vegetal green side.
Sure.
But certainly making Cab Franc is a challenge, but it's a beautiful resulting wine when it's done right.
Yeah, great. What about a preferred wine region? I mean, you haven't been to too many places yet, but are you looking to go somewhere else after you spend some time here in Napa Valley?
I am definitely looking to stay making wine in Napa for the long haul.
Okay.
I had the pleasure of working in Mendoza, Argentina, with Michel Roland at his winery there, and focusing on Malbec and cooler climate Cabernet and Bordeaux varietals there. And I was able to go to Marlborough, New Zealand, and focus on
Great.
Sauvignon Blanc and have that kind of harvest there, that huge production harvest at Oyster Bay, which was incredible. So I've felt really fortunate to have a couple of international harvests, and I definitely hope to remain in Napa Valley and working with Bordeaux varietals.
You've talked about interns a number of times, and it's great that this business allows you to travel the world, and you might be working for free. I mean, they certainly put you up and take care of you while you're there. You may not be making money, but you're getting a great education in an incredibly interesting place.
Yes.
And it's what an opportunity.
Yes, it's incredible, and I recommend to any young winemaker or any viticulture and enology students that they get as many internships as they can before landing in a full-time position, because once you get into a full-time job, it's difficult to get away, and so it's good to make sure that you get those experiences in while you can.
Yeah, and I've known some winemakers that will, during the winter months, they go down to the Southern Hemisphere and work in Australia and South America. So if you wanted to, you could work year-round in both halves of the world.
That is true. Certainly, if you've got really nice bosses that'll let you escape during the Southern Hemisphere harvest, that would be great. And of course, mine are very nice bosses. I don't know that they would let me go do that, but I think that is possible. Especially,
you might need to have your own brand at that point.
I think that that's definitely possible if you have your own brand.
Yeah. Now, see, Mark and Jen, they'll be the ones going down next year, and you'll be up here working
right
in February and March while they're enjoying some harvest down there somewhere.
I'm sure that they would love to do that.
All right, now my final question. Now, where do you see yourself when you turn 30?
When I turn
40.
40. Well, I certainly hope to be making wine, and first and foremost, making wine, hopefully in Napa on a hillside property. I am looking forward to, at some point, returning to an estate. And so I would say that when I'm 40 years old, I would hope to be a winemaker at a hillside property that is focused on making the absolute best wine possible from that site.
Sounds like a fine plan. Good luck to you. Thanks for your time, Mike.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for giving me your time, especially during this pandemic.
Yeah. Thank you for allowing me to come over. And again, let me remind people, in case they missed it at the beginning of the show, we're playing it very safe today.
Super safe.
Yeah, we
6
have
feet
our own
apart.
microphones. Yeah, we're spread out, and we're not sharing a wine glass. So,
thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
You can see Mike with his winemaking team of Mark and Jen on Facebook at Zeitgeist Cellars, and also on my Facebook page, On the Wine Road. I wish him well, and I know he has a bright future, someday working for a hillside estate. If you like what you hear, please subscribe to On the Wine Road podcast, and I'd really appreciate it if you provide a 5-star review on iTunes. You can find this podcast on most platforms, as well as Spotify, Google Play Music, LinkedIn on Publish, other Apple Media, YouTube, and iHeartRadio. My website is onthewineroad.us, and I'm on Instagram at @JDWineRoad. Thank you for joining me today. Continue to play it safe out there in the world, and I'll do the same as I travel on the wine road. I'm Jeff Davis.